In third grade, students are learning to fluently multiply. They are also building a conceptual understanding of what happens to numbers when they multiply. We are learning strategies to help us solve multiplication problems, and one rule that we should understand is called the commutative property. The commutative property is a rule for multiplication that states that the product of a multiplication problem does not change when you change the order of the factors. So for instance, if I have 3 times 2, I know that that equals 6. The commutative property says that I can move or commute. We learned that the word commute means move. I can move my factors 2 and 3, and if I have 2 times 3, that also equals 6. Another example, if I have 4 times 5, that equals 20. I also know because of the commutative property or rule that 5 times 4 equals 20. We also learned another rule to help us with our multiplication. We learned the associative property or rule of multiplication, which states that a set of factors can be grouped in different ways to multiply. You will get the same product no matter your grouping. And we use parentheses to help us group. And we also learned that we always multiply within the parentheses first when we solve with multiplication. So for instance, if I have the factors 3, 2, and 5, if I had 3 times 2 times 5, if I have this equation, I can group them in different ways. So if I put parentheses around my first two factors and I multiply 3 times 2, I know that that equals 6. Now I'm going to multiply the 6 times the 5. 6 times 5 equals 30. Now I can take that same equation with the same factors, 3 times 2 times 5, which I know equals 30, but I can group it a different way. I can group it this way and put my parentheses around these two factors, the 2 and the 5. 2 times 5 equals 10. Then I'm going to multiply the 10 times 3, which also equals 30. So I get the same product no matter how I group my factors. Again, 4 times 3, 4 times 3 times 2. I can group it this way. If I have 4 times 3, I know that 4 times 3 is 12. And then if I multiply 12 times 2, I know 12 2 times equals 24. And then the same way, if I have 4 times 3 times 2 and use the associative property, I can group these factors a different way. I can put my parentheses around the 3 and the 2. 3 times 2, I know that equals 6, and then I know 4 times 6 equals 24. So no matter how I group the factors, I will still get the product, the same product. So why is knowing the commutative and associative properties important to learn? So let's just say if you're solving a problem in life, you should know that you can multiply your factors in any way and that you can group numbers in different ways to multiply efficiently. So if I look at my first problem right here, and if I have 2 times 4 times 5, and I know my commutative property, if I know the commutative property, I'm going to look at the 2 and the 5, and I'm going to switch these around. I might say, instead of 2 times 4 times 5, I might say 2 times 5 times 4, and I'll look at it this way, and I know the commutative property, I know that I can move my factors around. Then I also know the associative property if I look at these numbers. I know that I'm going to group the 2 and the 5 because I know that that equals 10 when I look at it. And I know that 10 times 4 equals 40. It's much easier to multiply a multiple of 10, which equals 40. If I look at the problem below it, 6 times 3 times 5, I might look here and use the commutative property and say, I know that 6 times 5 is 30, right? That is 30. And if I multiply that by 3, again, I have a multiple I have a multiple of 10, which is easier. I know that 30 times 3, it's a lot easier for me to do repeated addition. 30 plus 30 plus 30. Oh, I just look at that and I can do this in my head, and I know that that equals 90. So you can apply these strategies to help you when you're solving problems. And it allows kids to be more flexible in their thinking if they understand the properties of multiplication.